Welcome back to Wake Up Shift is Happening. This is Deborah Ariel Pietsch, and I am very excited to be joined by my first guest today, who is quite kind of a phenomenon. And my second guest we'll be bringing on because we're actually doing some project things together. But we're now moving into a place, if you've been following the shows in the last couple months, laying the foundation for more information and putting more of the pieces of the puzzle together to assist you in understanding your transformation as well as what's been going on the planet, and especially what is about to go on the planet, because we are in such a transitional time and space. And the more you can understand, the more you can really let go of the old paradigm, embrace the new paradigm, and also call forth the blossoming of your transformation. So, Patrick Flanagan, I am so pleased and blessed to be inviting you. Thank you for joining me today for this first part in probably a 2 or 3 part series we've decided we're going to do, right?
Yes, thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you. And there is a laundry list in Patrick's life of who he has been and what he has brought forth. And I'm not going to go through the whole 8-page bio, but I will give you some bullet points here. So Patrick is known as a child prodigy in electronics. He worked with the Pentagon as a teenager. He's written the book Pyramid Power. That was back in 1973. That was published, which I do believe he's going to be republishing now in 2012. He's had numerous articles in Time Magazine, Esquire, Science Digest, etc. He's been published in scientific peer review journals. He's invented over 300 inventions. There's been several movies that have been made about his life, both in theatrical as well as ABC, NBC, etc. One of the other things that is also very quite interesting is that Patrick is known and in many circles, and also does identify with this as being the reincarnation of Nikola Tesla. And at 8 years old, he was building functional Tesla coils. When he had the remembrance of being Tesla, he was a baby, and then when he communicated it to his mother, was taken to the library to figure out who that was. The list goes on, and there's also anti-aging technologies. There's all sorts of different things, and the really awesome thing is that we're circling back, and I've had some delightful conversations with Patrick as we've just really started getting to know each other in the last couple of days, that are circling back at this time because there's so many things that are timely. So Patrick, thanks again for being here, and just so excited for everything that we get to share with the audience, and that we get to explore and discover, and to support people with their transformational experience. So thank you for being here.
Well, thank you, Deborah. It's my pleasure to be here.
And okay, so I only just said a few things. I'd love for people to understand how it was that if we can go back to the Nikola Tesla awareness, how did that come to you?
Well, when I was laying in my crib when I was a baby, I was looking at my feet, wiggling my toes, going, "Oh no, I have to wait, I have to grow this body up so I can get back to work." And when I was 8 years old, I told my mother I was Nikola Tesla, and she didn't know who that was, and I had to tell her. And then when I was 8 years old, I became a general class ham radio operator, built all of my own equipment, and my antennas were all Tesla coils. They emitted lightning bolts, and drove the neighbors crazy because the neighbors were getting 4-inch electric sparks off their faucets when they went to brush their teeth and things like that. The list goes on and on.
So, all right, and the Pentagon situation, how did that arise?
When I was 12 years old, I had moved from Montana to Houston, Texas. My father was an oil scout for Shell Oil Company, and we moved to Houston. And the school said that there was a big science fair coming, and that it was for all grades from junior high all the way through college level, and that if anyone wanted to build a science fair project and enter it, why, we could. And I had only been there 3 months, so I had built a guided missile detector, ICBM launch atomic bomb detector, and I was tracking all the missile launches all over the world and atomic bomb tests, and I listed them on a cardboard, all the tests, what date it was, what time it was, and where it was, and I won the entire science fair. I won over everything, over all levels. And that was like, on the weekend. And then on Monday, I was in study hall at school, and the principal said, called up on the loudspeaker and said, "Will Patrick Flanagan come to my office immediately? The Pentagon is on the telephone."
I know. I just want to the whole visual on that. Remember when you're in school and that intercom system, and it breaks through in all the classrooms, and it's like, oh crap!
No, what did I do now? And so I went to the principal's office, and there was a 5-star general from the Pentagon on the telephone, and he asked me how I knew about all the things they were doing and all the details. And I told him I had this, little device I made. And they sent a team of 12 scientists and military people from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base down to Houston. And they took my guided missile detector away. And they made my father sign a piece of paper stating that if I talked about it or revealed any details of it to anyone other than communication with delegated U.S. authorities, that I would be charged with treason, and that the penalty for treason is death. And and so that was the beginning of the government interest in me, and it continued throughout my entire life.
Wow. Well, before we even go further, what I would like to share with the audience is a clip that was you presenting back in 1998 at the Tesla Society Foundation. And I thought this was just a really great little background on how long you've been doing this, and a fun little story. So we're going to take a look at this clip. It's a couple minutes, and then we're going to come back and get further into the energy, Kirlian photography, and the pyramids.
Strange things have been happening to me ever since that electrocution a couple of years ago, and then culminating with the near-death experience that I had on Good Friday. And the amazing thing is that on Easter Sunday was my first talk here, and so this is a follow-up, and I think it's quite marvelous that you're choosing these holidays for me to talk on. Easter Sunday and then Mother's Day. What a wonderful opportunity to visit with you and to share with you some of my experiences. I'm a very eccentric person, very unusual, very hard to live with, very as a child, I gave my mother a lot of problems because I was a very weird child. At 8 years old, I had a dream, and many of you have heard the dream. That I'm going to cover some things I covered before, and you'll hear things that you haven't heard before. But In my dream, when I was 8, I had this, I was dreaming I was an adult flying an airplane, and I am a pilot. I became a pilot very early as I could in life. I don't know why I was rushing toward that, but I guess I like thrills, and flying was a big thrill when I was a teenager. But so anyway, as 8 years old, I'm flying an airplane as an adult, crash land on a desert island, and a UFO, flying saucer, lands, and the people that are in the flying saucer, they look like people, only they had blonde hair and blue eyes. They get out of the UFO. They have a football helmet that has electrodes all over the inside. It looks like a football helmet, and they put it on my head, and then they start messing with a console, and they're fiddling with this console over there, talking to each other, and I'm sitting there with the helmet on my head. And I said, "What are you doing?" And they said, "We're measuring your knowledge and intelligence." And I said, "Why?" And they said, "We're measuring your knowledge and intelligence to find out if you meet our minimum standards. And if you don't, we're going to kill you and all people on Earth." And then the dream would end. And I'd wake up terrified, because it was a very real dream. I mean, it was as real as standing here talking with you and visiting with you right now. It was an absolutely crystal clear dream. So that was sort of the beginning of my career when I was 8, because I began reading everything I could get my hands on, because when I read, the dream would go away, and when I stopped reading and went out and played with the other kids, the dream came back in full force. So the only way to keep the dream away was to learn and to read and to learn and to absorb information at an ever-increasing rate. I became a sponge for knowledge, and so that's why I was such, well, that's not why I was a weird kid. I was, whoops, we have a little wind blowing over the flowers there. Okay. So anyway, by the time I was 14 years old, I was clocked at 14,500, or 95%. Let's not exaggerate. 95% kind of 95% comprehension, and I was absorbing sometimes 4 or 5 books a day when I was 14, and read thousands and thousands of books. And my father was a scout for Shell Oil Company, and so he went around scouting oil wells all over the country. And so we moved every 6 months when I was a kid for a long time, and so I got to see a lot of places, and that was quite an experience. Changed school twice a year, and but I remember reading all the books in the Bismarck, North Dakota School Library. Every single book they had in the library I read, and then when I was done, I said, "Do you have anything else to read?" And they said, "Well, we have the archives downstairs." So they let me go down to the basement, and I went down to the basement and started reading everything in the basement, including all the old popular science, popular mechanics magazines and things like that. And those were very exciting, because they had stuff in, you wouldn't believe what they put in old popular mechanics and some popular science magazines. How to make thermite bombs, you know, how to make rockets, how to make dynamite, nitroglycerin. So then I built a little lab in my parents' house, and down in the basement, they gave me the basement, and then one day there was a loud explosion, and they came down to see what it was, and they found a rocket embedded in the cement wall about this deep. I built a little rocket, and it kind of went off with an explosive force. And then in school, I was always bringing little chemicals in my pockets, and I was pulling little pranks, you know, on the teachers. Like I had potassium permanganate and glycerin, in glycerin capsules, and when you put 1 drop of glycerin in a drop capsule per potassium permanganate, boy, I'm telling you that. So anyway, it starts reacting, you know, very slowly, and I figured out how much glycerin and how much to add and all this stuff, where I could create time-delayed fuses. And so it would go off like in 10 minutes, and it would go like that and make the worst smelly smoke you ever smelled in your life. And so one of these teachers, like, I didn't like this teacher, so Now I'm telling for the first time in my life this story. No one knew who did that, but anyway, I'd mix one of these little capsules together and slip it under the teacher's door and go on to class, and then 20 minutes later all the kids in that class were out in the hallway trying to figure out what happened, because the little thing destroyed itself. They would never figure it out. And so then on, this is Mother's Day story, so then, no, I mean, that's what kind of kid I was.
Okay, so that I just wanted to show that you have quite a sense of humor, and you've been quite the trickster, Patrick. How did that situation really come about?
Okay, well, when I was a kid, I was a prankster, and I asked my parents to buy me a chemistry set, and then back then you could buy any chemical you wanted from the pharmacist with your parents' permission. And my parents gave the pharmacist permission to sell any chemical I asked for. And so
did they know what they were doing, or did they not know what they were doing?
No, they had no idea. And I bought, pyrotechnic chemicals and, explosive things. And I made nitroglycerin and all kinds of things. And I mean, today they would have put me away as a terrorist, but back then, they didn't have such things. And so the school had it was a Fire Awareness Day, and they wanted to talk about, how rags soaked in linseed oil would spontaneously combust over time if you left them, laying around with soaked linseed oil, right?
Right.
So I gave a demonstration on stage, and what I said is that we don't have time for the rags to sit around for days or weeks and combust. So I've sped up the process. And so I had a bottle with some chemicals in it, and what I did is I said, now this is the same process, but it's going to happen really quickly. And I had taken a cardboard box, and I had coated it with the stuff that you put on eggs with silica, to prevent it from catching on fire, right? And so what I did is I had the cardboard box ready, and I shook up the bottle, and I threw it in the box. I folded the lid, and I put a chair on top of the box, and the thing exploded. When it exploded, it was a mason jar, and the lid of the mason jar cut a perfect hole in the end of the box the size of the lid, and it went clear across the stage and embedded itself in the wall.
Oh my gosh.
Right. And then smoke came pouring out of the box, and they had to empty the auditorium.
Oh my gosh.
I thought, man, am I in trouble? And they loved it. Everyone thought it was the greatest demonstration on paper I've ever done. And they, applauded me for it. So that was just one of my little deals back in, that was second grade or something.
Oh my gosh. So you really started to gain a reputation at a very early age.
Yes.
Awesome. That's really wonderful. Well, thank you for sharing that, because I really just wanted to share some of your background and some of I know we'll, even as we go through the series that we're going to do, that there's more that you're going to share, and I love it. So at this time, then, what I'd like to do is have us start to really lay the foundation about how the pyramid and how, when you started writing Pyramid Power, what was it that really drew you into all this information? Because we know at this time on the planet, and if you don't know this, then we're sharing this now, it's actually really important to be aware of the energy with the pyramids and what's possible and whatnot. So let's talk about Kirlian photography.
Yes.
How?
Well,
Go ahead.
well, I invented a device when I was 13 called the neurophone, and the neurophone was kind of like a modulated Tesla coil, and it put 3,000 volts across the head. Okay, and you'd put this on your head, and you'd play sound into it, and you heard it inside your head. And it turned out that profoundly deaf people could hear with it because it was bypassing the normal hearing nerve
Right.
and utilizing. 40 years later, after I invented it, they discovered how it worked. But because it was putting all this high voltage across the head, I was a photographer, and I used to develop film in the darkroom. And one day I was working with film in the darkroom while I had the neurophone on, and my finger was touching the film, and I developed it and had the imprint of my finger with all these rays around it, like light. And that was before anyone had ever heard of Kirlian photography, maybe before Kirlian heard of it. And I saved that photograph all these years. And when I wrote Pyramid Power, I put a photograph of it in the book. And because what was happening is I was putting high voltage across my head, and the high voltage stimulated the auric field, the energy field around my body, to emit light, which was picked up by the film. And so that was a very profound discovery. And I didn't follow up on it. Thank God Kirlian came along and wrote about it, because later on I built Kirlian photographic devices and things based on the same technology.
Okay, so and I love that, being a filmmaker myself, and anybody who spent any time in the dark room with the paper, the film paper,
Right.
knows how sensitive it is to light, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, so that was obviously a fantastic discovery that later became even that much more important to you.
Yes.
So while we're just talking about this, what I'd like to do is show a clip of Kirlian photography. This is one of the reasons that I really would like to presence Kirlian photography is because it's not that well known. I don't think a lot of people actually even know that it exists. Do you, Patrick?
Of course. I mean, I've read all about Kirlian, and I've done experiments with it, and it's being used. There's a device called the GDV. I don't know a lot of people, but a Russian scientist named Korotkov developed a device called a GDV that does medical diagnosis using Kirlian photography. And you put your fingers in this device, and it takes a picture of the aura around each finger, and then a computer analyzes the photographs, and then it tells you the energy level of every organ in your body. It's very profound, and so no, it's been developed to a high degree, but because of Korotkov, it actually is better known, than if, say, Kirlian, if Korotkov hadn't done that. If Kirlian alone, no, very few people would know about it. But, a lot of people in the medical world know about it.
Right, right. Well, and so the association here, and you know that I wasn't asking if you knew about Kirlian. I just don't think, yeah.
I'm ADHD, and Asperger, and so you have to forgive me.
No worries. No worries. I was like, oh, did I not formulate that question properly?
Yeah.
But that's okay. We're in the flow here. And So just that, I think that what I was thinking is that there's not that many people that aren't into science and aren't into that aren't necessarily that aware of what Kirlian photography is. And one of the reasons that I really wanted to start with this in building up to the pyramid power and the energy and all the other things that we're going to talk about is because I really would like people to make an association to build the bridge, if they don't already have the bridge, with energy. And because one of the things that I'm really standing for is creating unified fields. And when we are talking about activating energy and things like that, it's really good to have an association, even with your chakras, correct?
Absolutely. No, this Kirlian photography proves we have an aura. It proves that it has information and intelligence in it. And that relates to, like, how can a pyramid affect your energy? And it all relates together. Absolutely.
Right. Exactly. So as you can see from this clip that's showing is that the energy is around there's a life force around everything. And so this is just like, now I'm going to bridge something else here before we move on to the next subject, is that and Patrick, I'm just going to bring you into the mix here, that because I know that you're multidimensional, and I know that you can communicate. I hope this is okay to share, but that you communicate at a certain level with non-physical, either your higher self or, that kind of thing. And so what we're really building the bridge here is to have that be a normal part of the conversation.
That is great.
So that just because we can breathe, we're breathing air, we can't see it. We have a life force around us. A lot of people can't see that yet, but it's there. And so this is like a normal part of what we're moving forward and having more awareness about, as just as the breath that we take and the air that we breathe, we know it's there, that there's life force and there's life energy that's non-physically visible yet.
Yes.
Okay, so
well, some people can actually see it. You can train yourself to see it. I used to teach people in my seminars how to actually see auras, and some children can see it, and usually they're scolded for it, and they're brought to priests who try to do exorcisms on them and things like that. But there are people who do see auras, who do see the life force.
Absolutely. And I have a feeling that as we continue to increase our vibration and the ascension of the planet and whatnot, that is going to become normal. And so it's good to start embracing that as not just a possibility, but as a normalcy as we further transcend.
Absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly.
Okay, so I would love for us to move more into the information that is in association with pyramid power and the different discoveries that you have at the beginning of your book that I thought were just so phenomenal about how all this started to come to be. So rather than me just asking, questions and different things, can we, you just kind of flow with what is that you think is the good and the most important parts of this, I'm thinking like the Dr. Bovis discovery with the animals and things like that?
Sure. This was actually good for me because the Pentagon, had a very tight leash on me all my life. And so when I was about 30 years old, 28 years old, or a little earlier than that, I had read this article about Bovis, who is a French dowser, who went in the Great Pyramid of Egypt, and he found a dead cat in the king's chamber, and the dead cat was perfectly mummified with no odor. And he thought that was very unusual because, animals, when they die, generate lots of bodily fluids and bacterial decay and so forth. So he wondered if it had something to do with the Great Pyramid, with the shape of it, because he was in a pyramid. And so he went back to France and he built a pyramid out of wood, and he built a cubical box that had the same volume out of wood, well, actually the same base size, and he put a dead cat in the box and the dead cat in the pyramid. And what happened is that the dead cat in the box started putrefying and stinking, and he had to throw it out. And the one in the pyramid dehydrated with no odor whatsoever. And so he wrote about it. He didn't understand it, but he wrote about it and said that the pyramid shape had some kind of phenomenon. And so I started building pyramids. I built all of them based on the geometry of the Great Pyramid. And so I built all these pyramids, and I cut up bananas and I put them in a pyramid, and I had cubicle boxes. We live in cubicle boxes, so you wonder after this what they're doing to us. But I would put.
Hold on 1 second. I actually really would like to really make the point of what you just said, because I'm sorry for interrupting you, Patrick. That's actually a really valid, really very interesting point. Not valid, but interesting. Is that we live in many people in cities live in these cubicle boxes called apartments and condos. And what Patrick is sharing about right now is rather profound, with these dead animals that were found in, and I don't know if you mentioned, I just want to reiterate this in regards to the pyramid, that the reason he stumbled upon this, Dr. Bovis, is that how you correctly say his name?
Yes.
Because all these animals were piled up in a trash can inside the pyramid, correct?
Well, he just found a cat.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't know about, yeah.
Okay. And so, in any case, so just to bring this back into the modern day, how we're living, because these boxes that we're living in aren't alive. And I think where we're going in the new paradigm is that we are going to be taught or be learning how to live in spacious or buildings, etc., that actually have life force to them. So going back to what you were talking about in regards to your experiments. Thank you. Sorry, I just really wanted to presence that for the moment.
Oh, please interrupt me whenever you like. That's fine with me.
Okay.
These are very important points, because our architecture, there are only a few architects who recognize this. Le Corbusier was one, and Frank Lloyd Wright was another. Mm-hmm. Who recognized that the shape of the rooms we're in have a profound effect on our energy fields. And if you think of a room as having a length, a width, and a height, the rooms are vibrating subliminally at 3 frequencies. One, if you had a guitar string the length of a room, right, and another guitar string the height, and another guitar string the width of the room, right, and you stretch them out, all the same tension, and you were to pluck them all at the same time, they create a 3-note chord, right? And most of the rooms we're in, if you were to do that, it would sound horrible. That 3-note chord would be discordant. Okay.
I'm glad you're talking about that. I'm glad you're bringing that up. This is obviously, we're just going with the flow here. Right. Are you aware, Patrick, of what Vastu is? The ancient.
Yes.
I figured you would be.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's what I was referring to. I'm very aware of the Vastu technologies that can be used to create You're talking about discordance. So Vastu is one of the technologies that can be used to construct and build buildings and structures, etc., that actually are in accordance with the living being.
That's right. Accordance.
Yep.
Yeah. Versus
Awesome.
discordance. And so basically, if you think of the pyramid, it has it's based on the golden ratio, which is really the mathematics of all life and the mathematics of the entire universe and our galaxy. So if you take a cubical box, it creates a very discordant vibration inside. And, sometimes some people may not be aware of what it is, but, you might walk into a room that you've never been in before, and you'll feel you won't feel right. You go, this doesn't feel right. I got to get out of here. Okay. And so you leave the room. Well, it's very possible that room is so discordant.
Yes.
That you can't stand being there because of the vibration of the room. We're talking about the vibration from the dimensions of the room.
Yep.
And so if these rooms, even not cubicle boxes, but even rectangular boxes, if they're based on dimensions that create harmonious accordance rather than discordance, then when you go in that room, it creates a peaceful feeling in your body, a relaxation, and that's what the pyramid is. It happens to be, and also in the temples of Greece and some of the temples in Egypt, the dimensions of the rooms are actually. These people knew what they were doing because the architects built these rooms so that they produced harmonious vibrations, which were peaceful and relaxed the body and made you feel calm. And so, that's the end result of all my research on pyramid power. And when I wrote the book on pyramid power, I didn't know this, but pyramid power, had all this stuff in it about vibrations and energy and chi and bioenergy and about the structure of the universe and the structure of atoms and so forth, which is pretty advanced for 1973, and now my research has gone way beyond that, but now we know why these, and you go down to the Mayan temples, in Chichen Itza, and you go down there, they're all resonant structures.
Right.
And they're all based on this harmonious mathematics, and the tunnel systems that connect them are all resonant to very low frequencies that stimulate, parts of the body. And they're all designed to increase consciousness. They're all designed to enhance bioenergy fields. I mean, these people were extremely advanced. They may not have had scientific instruments like they have now, but they were, let's say, what we today would call sensitives.
Right, exactly. So before we get too ahead, because I'm so excited when we're going to get to what you're talking about, still laying the foundation,
Okay.
I wanted to have you talk about some of the early day experiments regarding like the razor blades and the maggots and things like that.
Okay, well, so I put in cubicle boxes. I put slices of bananas and slices of vegetables, and I also put slices of meat and in pyramids and in cubicle boxes, and I had them all over my lab. I had pyramids everywhere, and I had a cat, and the meat and the vegetables and the slices of bananas in the cubicle boxes all turned moldy and nasty and got maggots. The meat got maggots, and I had to toss them out. But the vegetables in the meat and all the things in the pyramids all dehydrated and smelled good. And my cat came along and kept ruining my experiments because she'd eat vegetables. she'd eat the meat, she'd eat this stuff out of the pyramids. And in fact, there was a woman in Tucson where I was living at that time, and she built this big pyramid, and she had a food business for selling, foods for camping, or to store away, for bad times or whatever.
Right.
And she would put these foods on trays in this big pyramid, and the food would dehydrate. And not only would it dehydrate, but that ants and insects, which would normally come in and eat these things, would not enter the pyramid, because the insects don't like the energy in the pyramid, ants and insects. And so she had her foods tested, and they said her foods would last 20 years and not degrade in the nutrient values.
Right.
And so I mean,
it's amazing.
Yeah, and so that's what I discovered in the lab, and I published it. And the wonderful thing is that when I published it, I got a call from my handler at the CIA, and he told me, he said, writing Pyramid Power was the best thing you ever did. And I said, why is that? And he said, because they think you went off the deep end and they loosened their leash on you.
Oh, you're kidding. Oh my gosh. Well, it's so funny because I never think about this, but the funny thing is, ever since I started when I started reading Pyramid Power, I've been having these visions of people walking around with the pyramids on their heads, looking like Looney Tunes, right? Now I understand why, because actually what I'm getting right now, and I'm just going to say, and I haven't done a lot of this in the show, so I get detailed information as you know, Patrick, I've shared with you. It's like, and I believe you do too as well, in the moment. I'm getting, multidimensional conversations and things like that. Well, the funny thing is, what I'm being shown right now is that the whole thing, there's a whole projection into, this is what I'm being shown. There's a whole projection into the mass consciousness of people with these pyramids on their heads looking like crazy people. And I think that that's actually one of the ways that it's kept people at bay from this information.
Yes.
Does that make sense to you? Do you resonate with that?
Totally makes sense, yeah.
So,
yeah, I have to say, though, that some people kind of did go off the deep end with the pyramid. People were saying that if you write a wish on a piece of paper and you put it in a pyramid, the wish will come true. Now, see, that's a little bit beyond my expertise.
Well, and it gets out of the science. It gets into the metaphysical science.
Exactly.
Right? Okay, so before we move on, I'd really like for you to share about the maggots and then the pilots that were ordered to not fly over the pyramids. Do you remember the maggot story that was that the maggots actually died or left when they were inside the pyramid?
Yeah, well, no, I put meat with maggots in one of my pyramids, and the maggots couldn't stand the energy and left. They all crawled out of the pyramid and left the meat alone.
I mean, honestly, this is the kind of stuff where you've got to go, seriously, like, there's something phenomenal here.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I'm just so excited to be bringing this information forth, because it's so timely. Okay, one other example that I'd love for you to share, which is the pilots.
Yeah, well, during World War II, pilots were told not to fly over the pyramid, because when they flew over the pyramid, it screwed up their instruments on their airplane. And so there was no fly zone over the pyramid because of it.
You know, what's interesting is, and I didn't ask you about this, and I know that I want to get into this further in the next part of the next piece of the series,
Right.
but the Bermuda Triangle is just being brought into my awareness right now. Are you aware of, or what are your thoughts in regards to the Bermuda Triangle with a
Wow.
possible pyramid?
Yeah, well, I rented you know, I'm a pilot, and I rented an airplane, and I flew for hours over the Bermuda Triangle, all over Bimini, and photographed the ocean floor and all of that stuff.
You're funny. You're so crazy. It's like, oh, were you just trying to get beamed up?
I was hoping, I was hoping that I'd disappear into the Bermuda Triangle. Um, but I had a friend by the name of Ray Brown, and he was a diver and explorer. And he was swimming in the Bermuda Triangle, scuba diving, and he came up on a pyramid buried in the sand, and it was made out. It looked like it was made out of glass, and he swam around and he found an opening and he went inside and he found these hands sculpted out of metal, and in the hands was a crystal ball, and he swam in and he lifted the crystal ball, and there were 13 chairs around these hands in this room, and he pulled the crystal ball out and he swam out, and he brought me the crystal ball, and this was way back in 1970s, and I examined the crystal ball, and it had 3 pyramids in it. You know, you could turn the crystal ball, and it had 3 pyramids, like the 3 pyramids of Egypt. It was very profound, and we did some, you know, higher consciousness work on it, and came to realize that this was, you know, one of the power pyramids, possibly of Atlantis, and if you Google Ray Brown and the pyramid crystal, there's quite a bit of stuff on it now.
Okay, go ahead. I'm just like, I don't want to interrupt you because I can't even believe you just brought this up. I'm just so excited that you actually are talking about this and that you actually knew Ray Brown.
Yes. Oh, yeah. He was a good friend. Mm-hmm.
Well, I just pulled up on my computer a document that I've had sitting on my desktop since February of this year.
Yes.
And my guides back in December had me researching Bermuda Triangle, Atlantis, Poseidon, Lemuria I'd already researched, and just tons of research in preparation for things that are about, more about to be revealed.
Mm-hmm.
And I had come across the information regarding, it's actually called the Atlantean Orb.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And they had, and then I have spent a very significant amount of time up in Mount Shasta. So I'm part of an email list, and just to keep my, just to know what's going on in Mount Shasta, etc. And they had the Arthur Fanning, who is now, you probably know, or maybe, I don't know. Do you know that Arthur Fanning is now the steward of the Atlantean Orb, that Ray Brown, and he was there in February speaking.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So we're going to come back to that because we have to, let's stick on I'm so excited because this is so much of what is just so important for people to be aware of.
Can we take a short break of a couple minutes?
Yeah. No, absolutely. So, okay, great. So we're going to take a short break and come right back. Hi, this is Deborah Ariel Pietsch, creator and host of Wake Up, Shift is Happening TV show, as well as projects like Beings of Light Unite. And this is a segment that is to identify, support, and help understand what activations are. So I'm calling this Understanding Activations and the High Vibration Light Frequency that I get to be a conduit for, 101. So what is an activation? And how does it work to create the profound, visceral, fast shifts and transformations that people have been experiencing over the last couple of years, and especially in the last 6 months? Well, the first thing to think about is the butterfly story and the experience of the caterpillar turning into the butterfly. So if you've heard or seen any of the shows, I've probably talked about this a couple of times. What this process is like the caterpillar, sitting on that branch, chomping on that leaf, contemplating from that innate intelligence of moving in to create a cocoon, unbeknownst to itself that it is going to go into 100% liquefaction, 100% DNA transformation. That's what's happening right now on the planet and with us. We are going through a quantum leap DNA transformation. And this is an alchemical process. And the challenge is this was meant to be a natural progression based on vibration and frequency in the last 11 to 12 years. And that process has been rather thwarted. So things like our pineal gland, our light codes, DNA codes that would naturally alchemically be popping and activating through high vibration frequencies of synchronicities, love, joy, experiences have rather been thwarted because we've been living in such a fear and survival mass consciousness, as well as the different things such as chemtrails, HAARP, and fluoride in the water, which shuts down the pineal gland. The pineal gland being one of the main components in the center of the brain that activates and then opens up our communication center, not only within ourselves, but with our higher self, and allows much of this experience to happen naturally. So what I have been able to do is not even been able to do, what I get to be is a conduit for this high vibration frequency of light that when I bring it through and I'm guided to work with holographic fields and chakras and pineal gland, it actually activates. It acts like a jackhammer of light, high vibration light, and it will pop through basically the energy that is kind of blocking the way and activate not only DNA and light codes and pineal gland, but also the I am presence at this time with the violet flame that we are meant to be living with and in and through, living from our empowered, activated I am presence. And so the light activation energy begins a process that is a domino effect of an almost undescribable, indescribable experience. It's experiential and it's very difficult to describe because there's not a lot of frame of reference on the planet for what you are going to experience and the shifts, because it's not just a visceral, like physical experience and shift. It's also shifts in your consciousness, in your awareness of your beingness, of your self-awareness, of your perspective, thoughts, creates openings with your higher self and communications, especially the nighttime, the bridge between the astral, your higher self, and in this dimension. So the activations act as like a pop to pop you through this cocoon experience. What we've been experiencing, especially since 2005, there's different things that have occurred on the planet that have kept us in this proverbial soup in the cocoon, not allowing that natural alchemical process to flow properly. And so what we're really experiencing at this point is it's like a rubber band being pulled back, stretched back, as far as it can, and that's where we're at right now. There's been so much challenge, and this journey has been quite arduous, especially for those that are either, you know, very awake or aware, or knowing that there is definitely things happening and that we are transforming. And so what's happening right now is, because Mother Earth is moving into the photon belt and these fifth dimensional frequencies, we are experiencing this like pull, and the rubber band has been pulled back. We're not fully engaging in the high vibration frequencies of the alchemical transformation in our physical and our subtle energy bodies. So what's happening is the rubber band is snapping back, and we're experiencing, a lot of people are experiencing like chaos and, you know, unneeded, unnecessary challenges. So hopefully that helps describe give a foundational awareness of activations and the high vibration frequency that I get to be a conduit for. And basically, if you haven't experienced an activation yet, either in a private session or in a group, I definitely encourage you to at least jump in and experience it. Everything is done through an activated and empowered I am presence, as well as for your highest and divine truth, calling that forth and working with universal laws and the cosmic laws. So, as always, we are in this together. Wherever you are on your journey and in your journey, I always remind people to completely, fully embrace and love yourself. Thank you. Water is a really important part of what you're bringing forth as part of your expression and gifts, and to support the Great Awakening. So what are these profound discoveries that you've made?
I have 300 inventions, and none of which, they're not, you know, 99.99999% of all inventions are improvements on things that have been made before, okay?
Right.
People improve inventions and improve this, and then they get a patent on it, right? Well, I have 300 inventions that have never been seen on this planet, ever. Possibly not since, certainly in recorded history. And
right.
And they've been given to me. I don't say that my wife Gail used to say, she's my wife who died. She used to say that I'm like a crystal with multi-facets, and you turn me one way and I receive one thing, you turn me another way and I receive another thing. And I feel like all my inventions have been given to me. What happens is that I'll get an idea and I'll research something, and the greatest thing someone can tell me is that it's impossible and can't be done.
Then you go to it.
Oh yeah, and what'll happen is that I'll get on something, and I'm like a bulldog. I won't let go of it. I'll grab onto it, and I won't let go of it, and I'll just research it. But all of my research it ends up being usually failures. But what'll happen is that I'll gather all this data that is basically meaningless to me. And then I'll be taking a shower, or I'll be taking a nap, and suddenly, like a download that takes 5 seconds,
yep.
all the information, circuit diagrams, resistor values, capacitors, coil values, all the information will be downloaded to me in one shot, which usually takes about 5 seconds. Yeah. And it's so overpowering that it just absolutely, I can't even describe what it's like. But then I'll go in my lab and I'll build it, and it works like right on the bat because I downloaded everything. And I also have a mental laboratory I go into, kind of a spiritual lab. And I go in there and I build things and I try them out and they don't work and I'll throw that away. And then I'll build something else and throw that away. And I keep doing it in my mental lab until I get something that works, and I'll build it and it'll work the way it did in my mental lab. So I'm very different, and some people think I'm weird. Thank God I made a lot of money because people say, if I didn't make the money, they what do they say? I'm I can't remember the name of it, but basically because I've made money and I'm successful in my inventions and they work, then they tend to
give you the credibility.
Yeah, give me the credibility. Yeah.
And not say that you're just a like kind of a whack job.
Yeah, exactly. Successful inventors with weird ideas are whack jobs. Yeah.
Not to be crude, but I know that's kind of like that's kind of the story that's out there with a lot of people.
Yeah.
So, what you were just talking about is so important for people to also bring into their conscious awareness in regards to the downloads, because
Yeah.
I was going to say the words that were on the tip of my tongue before you said it was download and or transmission. And, that is something that, and I talk about this on the show as we're becoming multidimensional beings, that it is normal for us to have downloads consciously or and transmissions consciously or at night, where as I've been activating people, what has become a very normal experience is the nighttime becomes a bridge from right. You experience that too?
Well, the thing about me is my parents they never knew when I went to sleep because I always stayed up later than they did, even as a baby.
Yeah.
And the fact is that I'm a night person and I don't like the daytime because there's too many minds operating. They kind of interfere with the field. And so at night, when everyone's asleep, is when I get my work done and when I get my downloads.
Yeah.
Really.
Yep, exactly. I mean, it's common for me to wake up at 2:00 in the morning and work until 5, go back to sleep for an hour or two, get back up. So I know what that's like. The other thing also is that the nighttime, even if you don't physically get up, what I have found over the years since I've further been opening, for my multidimensional, is that the you'll be awakened like 3, 4, 5 times a night, and the information is coming through to ground into this dimension. So that's
absolutely no. It's and we're all getting it. The thing is, what people don't realize is I absolutely know that we go to school at night when we sleep. And that people don't remember it, but that we go to school. We leave our bodies. We dream, but in those periods when we're not dreaming, we're actually in school, and we come back, and we're learning lessons and things, and we come back, and then that information works its way into what we do, and the more aware we get and the more conscious we get, the more this information comes through, and the more consciously aware we are of the fact that the information is coming through at night. I'm reaching the point where I'm Thomas Edison had this thing, and I did it when I was Tesla, but I didn't write about it or talk about it. But Thomas Edison had this thing where he never slept except on his lab bench. What he would do is he'd work, and when he got tired, he'd lay down. He'd clear space on his lab bench. He'd lay down on his lab bench and sleep for half an hour, and he'd get up and continue working. And that's what that's basically me. I've reached the point where I can't sleep at night hardly.
Right. I understand that. I really do. And what I'd love to do, Patrick, is for us to go back to something that you started talking about, because all this is about the energy that we're bringing through, and that as we're becoming multidimensional beings, that we're becoming way more aware of our energy field, and that sleep doesn't necessarily it's not gonna, I don't think anyway, that sleep is gonna absolutely be like a necessity the way it is a lot of times for 8 hours. Yeah, I see you nodding your head. You're in agreement. It's
Absolutely. I get about 4 hours, maybe.
Yep.
Sometimes 3 hours a night. That's about it for me.
Yep.
Yeah. Mm.
You know what's interesting, and so, and I have what I feel about that is that the more you increase your vibration and your awareness, you don't necessarily, you're not doing so much schooling in the astral plane. The schooling is happening kind of 24/7 in this dimension. Is that what you're experiencing as well?
That's exactly it. Yeah. Yeah, it's happening all the time. It's coming fast and furious. The thing is the more conscious you get, and your karma comes fast. I mean, you do something that's karmic, and you get it like right away. It doesn't happen next lifetime, or 10 years from now.
Right.
It's happening now.
Boom.
And so, and time is speeding up. I don't know if, I haven't talked to a lot of people, but the people I've talked to is that time is speeding up so fast that it's almost beyond belief.
Yeah.
And we're, just the average person is getting more information in 1 year than people got in an entire
decade,
50 years ago.
That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know. And exactly. And because the energy is accelerating and we're going through this transformation and the transition and into the fifth dimension and fourth, all that. So absolutely spot on. One of the things, I'm just looking at my notes. Before we go, I'd really like to get back into the pyramid information, the energy information. I had put in my notes in regards to the neurophone invention. There's a telepathic element to that, correct?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I don't want to miss that piece.
First time I knew about it is I'm 13 years old, and there was an attic in my parents' house, and my parents let me have the whole attic for my laboratory, and so I'd be up there at 4 in the morning, working on my inventions and my ham radio, and talking to all over the world on the radio and things. And so back then we had wire recorders, there wasn't even a tape recorder. So I had a 78 RPM record player, and I'd put music on, like classical music, and I'd listen through my neurophone to it. And my parents are asleep, family's asleep downstairs, and so I put my neurophone on, and I put on some classical music, and I'm listening to it in bliss. And my mother's banging on the ceiling saying, "Turn that music down, turn that music down, it's too loud."
Oh my gosh, you're kidding.
Oh, and of course there was no sound. It was coming through the neurophone. And so I knew right away. And so I took the arm off the record player, and she said, "Thank you, that's better." And she went back to sleep again. And so we had this happen numerous times. Well, I gave a talk at the Houston Amateur Radio Club at the age of 14, and I demonstrated the neurophone. There were about 600 people there, and I'd put the neurophone on or try it on people, up on stage, and someone would be listening to music, and people way in back, different people would say, "I hear that music, it's really clear." So it was a telepathic transmission because there was no sound.
Wow.
And yeah.
Are they available? Do you have any? Are they available right now?
You know, I have to tell you that the government, because neurophone technology could be used to program
Oh, I
people,
just got it. I just got it. I just got it. Yeah.
it was blocked. No, but what happened is that they blocked my patent for years, and then Admiral Red Rayburn, director of the CIA, he and I did favors for each other, and he did me a favor and got my patent relieved out of secrecy, and I did a favor for him. But what he didn't tell me is that he did a favor and got my patent out so I could manufacture neurophones, but then they blocked me in every way possible from putting it on the market. It's a James Bond novel. What happened to me? And but I did finally get neurophones on the market, various models, and was selling them. You can find them on eBay sometimes. But my latest neurophones, what happened is that I was selling them, but I put the price up on the web to raise money, to manufacture, and the end result was that because my electronics guys said they'd cost me $50 a piece to make, and so I put a price up, and then they cost me $150 a piece to make, and so I was losing money on every one I sold, and I sold thousands of them. But the problem is that when the economy started to dip, I was supplementing it from my other income, losing money on the neurophones. And the result is that right now there are no neurophones being manufactured here, but they're being manufactured in Germany. And we have neurophones on the way to us from Germany that I've designed, and they're coming here, and they will be here by October.
Wow.
And we have about 800 people lined up wanting to buy neurophones, and people can order neurophones. They can get them, and they are awesome.
Okay. Well, where do they order them from?
From my office.
Okay. All right,
Okay.
awesome. We didn't talk about that at all prior to this. So, and I really actually would like to talk with you much more about this, because I think that this is one of the things that, and I've talked about this on my show quite a bit actually. We've really been shut down, not to be victims, but
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
We've really been shut down from really being able to awaken to our telepathic abilities between the chemtrails and HARP and the other technologies that have been used.
All of it.
All of it. And so those of us that are able to actually break through to the other side. My guys keeps telling me, the song "Break On Through to the Other Side."
Right.
It's really been, it's kind of unique still. So, but we don't want it to be unique. We want everyone to be able to communicate clearly and telepathically, correct?
Absolutely, everyone. Yeah.
So, okay, now one of the things that when I was reading your information regarding the neurophone and the fingerprint that you were talking about before with the aura, and we've talked about the Kirlian photography and the energy field and whatnot, because we're going to get more deeply into the pyramid and the why it's important for us to actually be aware of the pyramid and the different ratios and the 5-pointed star and the sacred geometry.
Right.
So,
there's so much.
I know.
We just touched the tip of the iceberg.
Tip of the iceberg. I know. Okay. One of the things that came up when it's like, okay, we're electromagnetic beings, and you were talking about the aura and the ultraviolet rays from the body when it's excited by high frequency, high voltage, resonant signals.
Yes.
And so one of the things so can you talk a little bit about that? Because that occurs naturally in the pyramid, correct?
Yes. well, you see, disharmony or discord keeps us from accessing these abilities. Okay, and so we live in buildings that create discord and disharmony in our environment, and it also causes us to be discordant with each other.
Right, absolutely.
And then we got the fluoride in the water. We've got the fluoride from the dentist. We've got the chemtrails
And the mercury.
and the mercury. By the way, I have a mercury story for you. But
I know. Do you want to talk about that? Because that really affected the beginning of your life.
Okay, I'll just say that all of these things combined together are to keep our pineal glands from being activated so that we can access our higher multi selves. Okay, yeah. But that said, when I was so I'm born, I'm laying in the crib, I know who I am, I'm Nikola Tesla, I'm gonna become activated, and when I'm 2.5 years old, my mother gives me a great big bottle of mercury as a toy to play with. And this back then, no one knew that mercury was really bad for you.
Isn't that amazing in this lifetime that we didn't know that? Quote
Yeah.
unquote.
And lead,
hello.
and all these things. So I'm 2.5 years old, and I play with the mercury, and I'm rubbing pennies with it and making them in the silver. They look like dimes, right? And I'm putting it in my mouth and swallowing it and doing all kinds of things, and it causes diarrhea. I mean, I can tell you all kinds of things about mercury. But anyway, so it damages my brain, and I become autistic, full on autistic. And I didn't say a word after that until I was 5 years old. My brother says I just didn't have anything to say.
You're like, the hell I didn't.
Not really. But then what happened was we moved forward in life, and I stuttered like crazy. I stuttered so bad that none of the kids in school would play with me or have anything to do with me. And I couldn't talk without stuttering. My mother, she tried everything she could to help me, and they put pebbles in my mouth. I was supposed to have that, didn't work, and basically my brain was going like so fast that my mouth I couldn't like enunciate what was going on in my brain.
Wow.
And my mother, I don't know, I've overcome so many things. I had polio and all kinds of things, but when my mother said, think about what you want to say and count to 10 before you say it. Okay, and that helped me, because even now my speech is stilted sometimes, because if I don't control it,
right.
Okay.
Yep.
So we move forward in time, and I'm 30 years old, and a friend of mine, Dr. Guy Abraham, says he wants me to do a hair test to see what kind of heavy metals I have in my body, and I said okay, and so we send my hair to a lab, and the lab calls him back, and the lab says, Dr. Abraham, is your patient ambulatory? And he said, why? And he said your patient has the highest level of mercury ever measured in a human being.
It's amazing. It's really actually a miracle, obviously, that you were still alive.
Well, it would either kill me, or I'd be a complete vegetable.
Right.
Or it's so altered my brain and destroyed. That there are certain things in my brain that have been destroyed. That I'm weird. I'm unlike any other person on earth. And my friends, my friends didn't even know this. Tell me I'm very mercurial. And yeah, so
Amazing. Patrick, I know I had read that too in your background, and I just was really amazed by that because I'm very aware of the Mercury situation. A friend of mine has been, for the last 11 years, been following this whole thing and creating a documentary and around Mercury, and just how absolutely devastating it is in the vaccinations and everything. Yeah, so we're lucky that you're still here, basically, I think.
well, you know, the way I look at it is all these things that happen to me, and there's so many. I mean, that we have a book outline for my life, and you wouldn't believe it. But the whole thing is, all the things that happen to me, I believe, happened for a reason to make me who I am.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't hate anybody who did certain things to me, like from the government. I don't hate my mother for giving me mercury. You know,
Unbeknownst to her, what she was doing.
yeah, all of those make me who I am. So it's just fine. I'm happy with it. But I don't want, you know, it doesn't, what happened to me is like 1 in a trillion, you know, because most children who get vaccinations and people who get fluoride, you know, and children, they put fluoride in baby mouths and all this stuff, all that is serving to keep us from realizing who we are and becoming our multidimensional selves.
Yep. Absolutely. And Patrick, what you probably don't know is that 2 shows ago, what I did the show on was bridging Saint Germain and the banking industry, then also into the I am presence and the pineal gland, and did an I am activation or the pineal gland activation, actually, I should say.
Yes.
Yeah. So so you're spot on. I mean, we're in sync in so many ways. It's awesome. So, okay, let's talk about the bioplasmic body.
Yes. Well, the bioplasmic body, the Russians discovered early on that the body emits electrons, and that it emits all kinds of ions around the body, and that the body's energy field holds onto those, and it's really our auric field, and it is that's why it's a plasma. It's actually you know, plasma is an ionized gas, you know, and so it is a bioplasmic body, and that's what when you do the Kirlian photography and you stimulate the body with high voltage, that plasma, because if you take a gas plasma and you put voltage into a high voltage, it glows and emits light, which we can see with our eyes depending on the intensity, or photographic film or video cameras now can pick up that energy, and they can they pick up the energy, and then you can see it, and so the bioplasmic body is real, and like I say, it's interesting in the field of vision, the peripheral vision. You know, we have our direct rods and cones that we use for our direct vision, right? But we also have the peripheral vision, and sometimes you might be sitting quietly at home reading or contemplating something, and you see a movement out of the corner of your eye, and you look and there's nothing there, right? And cats can see these things. but what you might be looking at is an out of body spirit or something that is emitting light in a visual field that we can't pick up with our direct vision, but our peripheral vision receptors are actually sensitive to these infrared energy and ultraviolet energies.
Yeah.
And that's why you can train people to see auras, because what you do is you learn how to slightly cross your eyes and bring your peripheral vision in direct, into direct view, right? And then you slightly cross your eyes and you look around a person's body, you'll begin to see a glow. And you might see colors, and that's the bioplasmic field or the aura surrounding the human body.
Okay. So what is and the reason that I wanted to talk about this is because that energy field around us is so vitally important to our life force.
Right.
And
yeah. Putting it mildly.
Right.
Yeah.
And how it can be infiltrated by, right? We haven't talked about this, right? But how it can be infiltrated by outside technologies and other energies. So do you want to take it away?
Oh, absolutely. I don't know if it's ET technologies or just some of these government labs, and especially the Russians. The Russians were way ahead of us, and learn how to create microwave fields and other fields to disrupt the bioplasmic energy around the body. It was the Russians that first discovered the bioplasmic energy field.
Mm-hmm.
And so these fields can be disrupted, and there are people who maybe who maybe do this consciously. But there are vampires really do exist, but they're, the story of vampires sucking blood. Well, they're sucking the life force, but the real life force is the bioplasmic energy field surrounding our body.
Absolutely.
And there are people who are energy vampires who you get around them, or let's say you might get a massage from somebody and you feel absolutely drained once you get a massage. Well, that person is massaging you and sucking your life force, your bioplasmic energy field, and energizing themselves with it. And
Right.
there are lots of people who do that, who are trained to do that.
Yeah.
And there are people who do it, maybe untrained, but it's a real thing.
Absolutely. So this goes hand in hand with something that I continuously say on this show and when I'm doing private sessions and working with groups is that I think one of the foundational elements and foundational tools for people to learn, and I help teach this, is how to clear your field, how to own your field, and how to create sovereignty with your field, your energy field.
You're right on. Absolutely. Good for you. Yeah.
Thank you. Well, and it's like you. I've had a hell of a time with it,
Yeah.
I've been infiltrated for years. And it was like I got to the point where I was like, enough is enough. This is bullshit,
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. No. Right on.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I had a seminar I taught years ago in the 70s. It was called Source of Energy, and energy was INNERGY, or inner energy, which is the force. And I had 16,500 graduates from my seminar. And what I did is I taught people what clothes to wear, what foods to eat, and exercises to balance the acupuncture fields and energy in the body, how to prevent energy vampirism and all of that stuff. and also I taught sex energy, how to increase and control your sex energy so you don't drain that, because that's a whole big subject in itself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Actually,
But
you know what? I'm glad you brought that up, because that was one of the things that I had in my notes that I wanted to touch upon in regards to the whole energy field, as we're really honing into our electromagnetic field, and the sexual energy. We've been indoctrinated. That is like one of the highest vibrational energies when we're in that right? The love-making energy of that, the two people, the charge of that energy.
that's right.
And we've been indoctrinated through religion and through other means that that's bad, not to do it. You have to, there's all these rules and regulations.
Yeah, well, those people are indoctrinating. You're out there having lots of fun and using it for themselves. They just don't want us to.
Because it's another way for us to expand and be in our multidimensional self.
Exactly. There's nothing wrong with that energy. I can tell you stories about that, but go ahead.
We'll save that for part 2.
Okay.
Or maybe part 3.
Okay.
But because one of the things that I continuously bring into this is this show is to really support people to be thinking about how we have been indoctrinated, the programs, the beliefs, etc., that have really we've been instilled with, that have disempowered us, not to be victims, but we're here to wake up.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
Right? So we want to look at all of this.
Good for you, boy. We are in tune, and we hardly know each other, and yet we're just right on the same page. That's awesome.
I know, I love it. And you know what I'm gonna say right here, Patrick, is that while we took the break, I had a text message from Michael DiMartino, who's the producer of Synthesis 2012. And Patrick and I are going to both be, and we're very, very involved with this event happening at the end of the year in Mexico at Chichen Itza, Synthesis 2012. You're going to be there. I'm going to be there. We have amazing things that we're going to be bringing forth, not just individually, but all these musicians and all of the people. And so Michael was going to come on, but he just got called away on an emergency that he needed to handle. So he's not going to come on. So what we were just talking about in the regards of being, just in sync and just getting to know each other. There's so many people now that it's like time where you are coming together, meant to come together with your co-creative soulmates, soul partners, people that you're here to do stuff with and to really bring this thing home. And Patrick, that is one of the things that we did talk about in one of our phone conversations.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, do you want to talk further a little bit more about that? Just about
absolutely.
Where we are at this time?
Oh, well, where we are at this time is we all are alive, the most important time in human history in 26,000 years of human history, recorded and unrecorded, and we're all. This is it. This is the moment, and this event at Chichen Itza is going to be awesome. I mean, all the highly conscious people are not all. When I say all of it, I mean a lot of highly conscious, aware people are going to be there, and it's going to be. The event of an event like this can only happen every 26,000. so I'm really excited about it. Yeah,
I know, I am too. And we're also we're going to have a lot more information when Michael is available to come on the show and talk about it. And we'll talk more about the Mayan elders and all of the different elements and aspects that are part of the festival, as well as part of what is being prepared ahead of time energetically. There's other events happening that we're going to be tapping into, Egypt, London, Australia. These are all already in process, that we're in communication with all these other events too. So we'll definitely talk more about that. Okay, so we need, one of the things, Patrick, we need to talk about before we end this first part one of this is, let's get into the five-pointed star of the with the pyramid, the temperature in the pyramid, the alignment. Let's talk about all of that. And let's start to really get into the meat of the pyramid, because that's going to then springboard us into part two.
Okay, well, the Great Pyramid is the most accurately aligned building on Earth to true north. True north is the axis of the Earth versus the magnetic north, and it's aligned within 1/2 of 1 degree of true north. And architects try to align their buildings north and south, right? And some of them align them to true north. But there's no building. I mean, this is a building that covers 15 acres. Its base is 15 acres in size, and it's aligned that accurately. And then we've got the temperature in the king's chamber is 68 degrees. The massive nature of the blocks of the pyramid is a thermal mass, and the interior of the king's chamber is 20 degrees Celsius, which if you take a temperature of water, freezing point is 0 Celsius or degrees centigrade, and boiling is 100 degrees centigrade. The king's chamber is 20 degrees centigrade, which is 1/5 the distance on that scale, which is 20 degrees Celsius is 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, and Celsius. The reason we're talking metric is metric is a more accurate way of measuring things than using our methods of measuring feet and degrees and so forth. Distance in feet.
Right.
And then we got the what was the other thing? Yeah.
The five-pointed star, the pentagram. Yeah.
So we got
sacred geometry.
Yeah, sacred geometry. So 5, 1/5, 5. The Great Pyramid, the angle of the Great Pyramid is precisely related to the golden ratio, which happens to be defined by the bisection of lines in a perfect five-pointed star. And the Pythagorean Society, Pythagoras, way back when, it was a crime punishable by death to reveal to anyone how to draw a pentagram, how to draw a perfect pentagram.
Why? Okay, I want to really presence that, because I know the energy of the sacred geometries, and then also the sacred geometry that's working with the pyramids. And we're not just, right now we're talking about the Great Pyramid, but there's the other pyramids that we're going to bring into this series that are being discovered and whatnot as well. So what's the significance of that?
Well, if you look at the Mayan pyramids and all the other pyramids, they also are related to the same geometry, because the golden ratio can turn up in many angles. But the Great Pyramid, the precise structure of the Great Pyramid is very, very clearly defined. If you were to look at just the Mayan pyramids, you wouldn't figure it out. But if you take the Great Pyramid and you realize that it's based on phi, or the golden ratio, which is defined by the five-pointed star. The five-pointed star, I have tattoos, five-pointed stars all over my body, because the five-pointed star is a energy significator. Five-pointed star, just the design itself generates an energy field.
Yep.
And so this is all clearly defined. I also have a tattoo on my arm here. It's based on what's called the Sri Yantra, which is 12,000 years old, from India. And it's got the same golden ratio geometry. And it turns out that in fact, one of the main triangles on the here.
Great. I love it. I love it.
One of the main triangle on that design is a cross section of the Great Pyramid, and it's 12,000 years old. And it turns out that design, if you take those triangles in there and you do the ratio of the sides of the triangles to the bases of the triangles, they give you the exact ratios of what's called the Balmer lines, of the spectral lines of hydrogen coming from every star in the universe. I mean, the secrets of the universe are contained in the pyramids and the structures and the mathematics of the pyramids. And the human body is based on the same mathematics. The lengths of our digits, the different parts of our fingers and bones to each other are all based on the same mathematics. And every living thing in the universe and the shape of the galaxies are all based on the math, and that's a whole subject in itself.
Absolutely. Okay, so what is the because I actually just forgot. I've forgotten the what is the number of between for each of the joints? Is it 16? What is the what's...
It's 1.618. If you break it down into a ratio, it's called the golden ratio.
Right.
It's called the golden cut, and it's 1.61803398975, and it goes on to infinity.
Right.
There is no end to it.
Right.
But you can draw it with a straight edge and a compass.
Right.
And just like there's a pi goes to infinity.
Mm-hmm.
But the golden ratio is the most significant number in the entire universe. It's a never-ending fractal,
and it's in basically everything, every living aspect of life.
Everything. It's in the hydrogen bond. Yeah.
Right. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add and I'm going to insert. At the end of this interview, I'm going to, because there's some great videos on YouTube that actually show the golden ratio in, right, when it goes really, really fast edit through flowers and just everything. It's just, in fact, I'm going to add that. That's a second thought.
Absolutely.
Okay, now what about Da Vinci diagram?
Okay, well, Leonardo da Vinci was into the golden ratio,
right?
And his paintings, if you take the golden ratio and you take a canvas and you break it down and you start drawing the way the canvas is broken down into the golden ratio, Leonardo da Vinci put significators or significant items in all of his paintings at these intersections of the golden ratio. And if you look at the man in the circle,
yep.
The Da Vinci drawing,
Da Vinci being.
Yeah. If you look at that, it's got golden ratio, and it shows how the human body fits in to the golden ratio. we could go on and on about that if you analyze it. And I have it, of course, in my book, Pyramid Power.
Right.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, is out of print, but you were thinking about republishing that, correct?
I'm going to republish it. It needs to be republished because it's actually more appropriate today than it was when I wrote it in 1973.
Don't you just love that? Okay, all right. So another thing that I wanted to talk about is the cement in the blocks of the pyramid, because we have only touched the tip of the iceberg of what we're going to get into with the pyramid down the road here. But the cement, it was chemist analyzed.
Yes, yes. The blocks in the Great Pyramid were not cut; they were cast, just like concrete, and that's been proven without a doubt. And some of the blocks were cut, not all of them, but some of them were cut. But the blocks that make up the bulk of the pyramid were cast in place, and just like cement blocks, and that's the chemist that did that. Amazing, because he's duplicated it, and absolutely, there's no doubt whatsoever.
Right. And they okay, so the chemists, so they cannot duplicate. I just want to reiterate that they cannot, to this date, they still cannot duplicate the compounds.
Not
Is that true?
Not exactly.
Okay.
But because there are seashells and other things like jumbled up in the blocks. Like if you break them off and you analyze them under a microscope, you can see that this was not a solid block that was cut from a quarry, because those solid blocks cut from the quarry don't have jumbled up seashells in them.
Oh, right. Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, very good. Okay, so now, what would you say? So we're going to continue this in a couple of part series, and we're going to get more deeply into the sacred geometry and the power, the energy, the power of the pyramid power. No pun intended. Obviously, that's the name of your book. And why it's important at this time for us to actually be aware of this information. And this is actually more cutting edge than I think most people are really even aware of just yet.
Yes.
Because of what some of us are aware, that is high probability of tying it in with Atlantis, new discoveries, the new pyramids that are being discovered and being revealed, and how this is all tying into the shift.
Yes.
So, yes, will you speak to that, Patrick, before we just sign off here?
Well, new pyramids are being discovered all over the world. There are pyramids everywhere. There are pyramids in China. There are pyramids under the ocean, pyramids under the ocean in Japan. Of course, we've got all the pyramids in South America and in Central America. And all of these pyramids are mathematically related. They're all positioned on specific areas mathematically. If you do a grid over the earth, they're positioned mathematically on specific grids. And it is my belief, based on some of the knowledge we have accumulated, that these pyramids were actually in direct communications with each other and also in communications with other galaxies.
And I'm in agreement with that. And at this time, this is part of the shift and the bringing this planet into alignment with the galactic family and the other galaxies, correct?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And part of that is the bringing as the Earth is going into alignment with the edge of the galaxy, coming off the Hunab Ku. which is the center of our galaxy, the Earth is coming into what's called the photon belt.
Right.
And that these pyramids are being activated by that. And so the shift is all this great shift is happening on multi levels.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. All right. So we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up for this part 1 of a couple part series. This has been Patrick Flanagan. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for everything that you, and we've only with you we've only like touched the tip of the iceberg as well, as the saying goes.
Yeah, you're awesome. I've enjoyed this so much.
Thank you. Thank you. I have too. And you have been tuning into Wake Up Shift is Happening. I'm Deborah Ariel Pietsch. This has been Patrick Flanagan. We are bringing you information, wisdom, ancient secrets, and all sorts of magical things to support you with your awakening, transformation, and transcendence through this shift at this time. So thank you for participating. Thanks for being here, Patrick.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, and so from here, I'm going to have you guys take a look at the clip that I'm going to add in regards to the golden ratio, and this is going to lead into the next couple of shows. I'm so excited. Wherever you are on your journey, just remember to continue to love yourself and embrace and proactively call forth your transformational experience. Until next time, much love.
Everybody gather around the fire and sing our favorite songs. Let's share our stories, become closer. Closer is where we belong. Is anybody listening? Does anybody hear what I say? Is my body dreaming? Are we going the same way? I believe we can turn this world around. I believe we can mend what ties we break. I believe we can turn this world with open minds and willing hearts, saying I will reach for the all inside of me. Now, it's time to stop being afraid of one another. In spirit we stand hardly different, so let's hold on to love and work together like the sun and the moon. Together is where we belong. Oh, I believe we can turn this world around. I believe we can mend what ties we break. I believe we can turn this world with open minds and willing hearts, saying I will reach for the all inside of me. Yeah. Step 1 and 2. Step 3 and 4 we march. Fueled by everyone's inner spark.
Very early, as early as I could in life. I don't know why I was rushing toward that, but I guess I like thrills, and flying was a big thrill when I was a teenager. But so anyway, as 8 years old, I'm flying an airplane as an adult, crash land on a desert island, and a UFO, flying saucer, lands, And the people that are in the flying saucer, they look like people, only they had blonde hair and blue eyes. They get out of the UFO. They have a football helmet that has electrodes all over the inside. It looks like a football helmet, and they put it on my head, and then they start messing with a console. And they're fiddling with this console over there, talking to each other, and I'm sitting there with the helmet on my head. And I said, "What are you doing?" And they said, "We're measuring your knowledge and intelligence." And I said, "Why?" And they said, "We're measuring your knowledge and intelligence to find out if you meet our minimum standards. And if you don't, we're going to kill you and all people on Earth." And then the dream would end. And I'd wake up terrified, because it was a very real dream. I mean, it was as real as standing here talking with you and visiting with you right now. It was an absolutely crystal clear dream. So that was sort of the beginning of my career when I was 8, because I began reading everything I could get my hands on, because when I read, the dream would go away, and when I stopped reading and went out and played with the other kids, the dream came back in full force. So the only way to keep the dream away was to learn and to read and to learn and to absorb information at an ever-increasing rate. I became a sponge for knowledge, and so that's why I was such, well, that's not why I was a weird kid. I was, whoops, we have a little wind blowing over the flowers there. Okay. So anyway, by the time I was 14 years old, I was clocked at 14,500. Or 95%, let's not exaggerate. 95% kind of 95% comprehension, and I was absorbing sometimes 4 or 5 books a day when I was 14, and read thousands and thousands of books. And my father was a scout for Shell Oil Company, and so he went around scouting oil wells all over the country. And so we moved every 6 months when I was a kid for a long time, and so I got to see a lot of places, and that was quite a...
Back in 1973, that was published, which I do believe he's going to be republishing now in 2012. He's had numerous articles in Time Magazine, Esquire, Science Digest, etc. He's been published in scientific peer review journals. He's invented over 300 inventions. There's been several movies that have been made about his life, both in theatrical as well as ABC, NBC, etc. One of the other things that is also quite interesting is that Patrick is known and in many circles, and also does identify with this as being the reincarnation of Nikola Tesla. And at 8 years old, he was building functional Tesla coils. When he had the remembrance of being Tesla, he was a baby, and then when he communicated it to his mother, was taken to the library to figure out who that was. The list goes on, and there's also anti-aging technologies. There's all sorts of different things, and the really awesome thing is that we're circling back, and I've had some delightful conversations with Patrick as we've just really started getting to know each other in the last couple of days, that are circling back at this time because there's so many things that are timely. So Patrick, thanks again for being here, and just so excited for everything that we get to share with the audience, and that we get to explore and discover, and to support people with their transformational experience. So thank you for being here.
Well, thank you, Deborah. It's my pleasure to be here.
And okay, so I only just said a few things. I'd love for people to understand how it was that you, if we can go back to the Nikola Tesla awareness, how did that come to you?
Well, when I was laying in my crib when I was a baby, I was looking, my feet wiggling, my toes, going, oh no, I have to wait, I have to grow this body up so I can get back to work. And when I was 8 years old, I told my mother I was Nikola Tesla, and she didn't know who that was, and I had to tell her. And then Um, when I was 8 years old, I became a general class ham radio operator, built all of my own equipment, and my antennas were all Tesla coils. They emitted lightning bolts, and which drove the neighbors crazy because the neighbors were getting 4-inch electric sparks off their faucets when they went to brush their teeth and things like that. The list goes on and on.
So, all right, and the Pentagon situation, how did that arise?
When I was 12 years old, I had moved from Montana to Houston, Texas. My father was an oil scout for Shell Oil Company, and we moved to Houston, and the school said that there was a big science fair coming, and that it was for all grades from junior high all the way through college level, and that if anyone wanted to build a science fair project and enter it, why, we could. And I had only been there 3 months, so I had built a guided missile detector, ICBM launch atomic bomb detector, and I was tracking all the missile launches all over the world and atomic bomb tests, and I listed them on a cardboard, all the tests, what date it was, what time it was, and where it was, and I won the entire science fair. I won over everything, over all levels. And that was like, on the weekend. And then on Monday, I was in study hall at school, and the principal said, called up on the loudspeaker and said, "Well, Patrick Flanagan, come to my office immediately. The Pentagon is on the telephone."
I know. I just want to the whole visual on that. Remember when you're in school and that intercom system, and it breaks through in all the classrooms, and it's like, oh crap!
No, what did I do now? And so I went to the principal's office, and there was a 5-star general from the Pentagon on the telephone, and he asked me how I knew about all the things they were doing and all the details, and I told him.
Welcome back to Wake Up Shift is Happening. This is Deborah Ariel Pietsch, and I am very excited to be joined by my first guest today, who is quite kind of a phenomenon. And my second guest will be bringing on because we're actually doing some project things together. But we're now moving into a place, if you've been following the shows in the last couple months, laying the foundation for more information and putting more of the pieces of the puzzle together to assist you in understanding your transformation, as well as what's been going on the planet, and especially what is about to go on the planet, because we are in such a transitional time and space, and the more you can understand, the more you can really let go of the old paradigm, embrace the new paradigm, and also call forth the blossoming of your transformation. So, Patrick Flanagan I am so pleased and blessed to be inviting you. Thank you for joining me today for this first part in probably a 2 or 3 part series we've decided we're going to do, right?
Yes, thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you. And there is a laundry list in Patrick's life of who he has been and what he has brought forth. And I'm not going to go through the whole 8-page bio, but I will give you some bullet points here. So Patrick is known as a child prodigy in electronics. He worked with Pentagon as a teenager. He's written the book Pyramid Power.
I had this, little device I made. And they sent a team of 12 scientists and military people from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base down to Houston, and they took my guided missile detector away, and they made my father sign a piece of paper stating that if I talked about it or revealed any details of it to anyone other than communication with delegated U.S. authorities, that I would be charged with treason, and that the penalty for treason is death. And and so that was the beginning of the government interest in me, and it continued throughout my entire life.
Wow. Well, before we even go further, what I would like to share with the audience is a clip that was you presenting back in 1998 at the Tesla Society Foundation. And I thought this was just a really great little background on how long you've been doing this and a fun little story. So we're going to take a look at this clip. It's a couple minutes, and then we're going to come back and get further into the energy, Kirlian photography, and the pyramids.
Strange things have been happening to me ever since that electrocution a couple of years ago, and then culminating with the near-death experience that I had on Good Friday. And the amazing thing is that on Easter Sunday was my first talk here. And so this is a follow-up, and I think it's quite marvelous that you're choosing these holidays for me to talk on. Easter Sunday and then Mother's Day. What a wonderful opportunity to visit with you and to share with you some of my experiences. I'm a very eccentric person, very unusual, very hard to live with, very, as a child, I gave my mother a lot of problems because I was a very weird child. At 8 years old, I had a dream, and many of you have heard the dream. That I'm going to cover some things I covered before, and you'll hear things that you haven't heard before. But in my dream, when I was 8, I had this. I was dreaming I was an adult flying an airplane, and I am a pilot. I became a pilot.